When people talk about betrayal, they usually mean infidelity. Some lovers lie. A midnight phone call. A lipstick stain. But real betrayal? The kind that changes you? It's quieter. It's a look. A shrug. A truth someone chose not to tell you until it's too late. I was 34 when I learned that lesson the hard way, in a house with navy shutters on Mercer Street in Savannah, Georgia. My husband, Theo, and I moved to Savannah for a fresh start. We told our friends in Chicago it was for the weather, or the slower pace. But the truth was, our marriage had gone cold. Not hostile, just quiet. He worked in fintech, remotely. I was writing for a travel blog no one read. We hadn't touched each other in months, and we both pretended not to notice. Then came Nora. She lived across the street in a white colonial with a front porch swing and wind chimes that tinkled whenever the breeze shifted. She had auburn hair, a husky voice, and one of those laughs that made you want to lean in and hear more. She reminded me of the girls I used to envy in college, effortless, magnetic, the kind who never checked their lipstick in the mirror. At first, I was relieved when she took a shine to Theo. We were at a neighborhood wine night, and he seemed so alive, talking to her. Laughing. Actually laughing. I watched them from the porch and thought, maybe this is good. Maybe he just needs a friend. It had been so long since I'd seen that version of him. The light in his eyes. The way his shoulders relaxed. With me, he'd become a ghost of himself, smiling out of politeness, nodding at stories he wasn't listening to. But that night, Nora said something that made him throw his head back in laughter, full and unguarded. I felt something twist inside me. Something I didn't recognize as jealousy, not yet, but unease. Nora had a way of making you feel like the only person in the room. She tilted her head when she listened, mirrored your body language, always found something in common, an obscure book, a forgotten song, a shared hatred of humidity. She was wearing a rust-colored sundress that clung to her figure in all the right places. I remember thinking, God, she's like honey. Everyone just leans in. I was sitting on the porch swing with Claire from 2 doors down, sipping a glass of warm rose, but I couldn't take my eyes off them. Nora was animated, her hands dancing in the air as she talked. Theo leaned in slightly, nodding, eyes locked on her. Not in a flirtatious way, at least not overtly. But there was an intimacy in it. The kind that creeps in when two people realize they understand each other in some quiet, specific way. You okay? Claire asked me, nudging my leg lightly with her foot. Yeah, I said, a little too quickly. Just tired, long week. She followed my gaze, then gave me a pointed look. You're not worried about that? Are you? I smiled tightly. Of course not. He's allowed to have a conversation without me. Hovering like a chaperone. Claire shrugged. Just saying. Nora's got a bit of a history. Her last neighbor's husband got very interested in her yoga classes. The wife moved out. Nora stayed. I laughed, too loudly. Well, Theo's not into yoga. Claire leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. Just keep your eyes open, okay, Anna? I've seen that kind of smile before, and it never ends well for the one wearing the wedding ring. Later that evening, as people were saying their goodbyes and walking back to their houses with leftover plates wrapped in foil, I lingered on the porch while Theo helped Nora gather empty glasses. You two looked like you were having fun, I said as he came back across the lawn. He gave me a small grin. She's easy to talk to. Reminds me of someone. Who? I asked, teasing. You. Before you started worrying all the time. I froze. Just for a second. Just long enough for him to notice. I didn't mean it like that, he added quickly. Just, you used to laugh like that too. I looked away. I still do. Just maybe not with you. He didn't reply. We walked into the house without another word, both pretending not to feel the wall that had quietly gone up between us. That was the night it started. Not the affair, not the physical one. That would come later. But something shifted, and I knew it. I felt it in my bones, the way animals feel a storm before it hits. You can't always see the betrayal coming, but you can feel the air change. And that night, the wind was already beginning to howl. It was a Thursday afternoon when I saw the first crack. I was writing at a coffee shop downtown when Theo texted. Running late, work call. Love you. I walked out 10 minutes later and saw our car, his car, parked around the corner. 2 blocks from Nora's. The engine was still warm. The next day, I asked him, lightly, "Did you stop by to see Nora?" He didn't even blink. No. Why? I smiled, nodded. Noted. I kept quiet for 2 weeks. Not because I didn't care, but because I wanted to see how far it would go. How deep the lie would get buried. I watched them, casually, deliberately. From across the street. From the window above the sink. From my seat in the living room, pretending to scroll while their laughter floated through the open air like a taunt. They had grown bold, too bold. A passing hand on his arm. A whisper that made her giggle. Once, I caught a flash of his hand brushing a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. Intimate. Almost rehearsed. One afternoon, I asked, "How's work?" Theo didn't even glance up from his phone. Busy. I've got 2 client calls this evening. Might run late. Want me to hold dinner? He hesitated. Don't bother. I'll grab something. I nodded and forced a smile, like I always did. Okay. That evening, I watched from the upstairs bedroom window as he left our house with his laptop bag and walked, no car this time, across the street. Right up her front steps. He knocked once, and she opened the door almost immediately, like she'd been waiting. I stood there for a long time after the door closed. One night, while he was in the shower, I opened his laptop. He never changed his password. Still used our dog's name and our wedding year, Clemens 2014. He didn't think I'd look. That was his real mistake. The folder was called Work Reports, almost laughable. I clicked it open with shaking fingers. My breath hitched the moment the contents loaded. It was all there. Screenshots, texts, videos. Her voice, moaning his name. He's saying things to her he hadn't said to me in years.
I don't know how I lived before you. She's just there. Like a piece of furniture.
I almost feel bad.
Don't. She stopped seeing me a long time ago.
She's still writing that blog, bless her heart.
She thinks I'm just stressed from work. Adorable.
Adorable? I gasped, one hand flying to my mouth like I could stuff the sound back in. That word burned through me. It was casual, cruel. A mocking dagger dressed in sweetness. The bile rose in my throat. I scrolled further, against my better judgment. There were videos. A clip of them in her kitchen, her legs around his waist, giggling. Another, a screen recording of their text exchange.
She wore that yellow dress again today. The one that looks like a sad banana.
She said she bought it for me. Said it reminds her of when we met.
Ugh. You're a saint.
I'm a liar with good aim.
I shut the laptop. Slammed it closed. Not out of anger, but to stop myself from seeing more. I couldn't take more. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, gripping the counter's edge. The room spun. I focused on the tile floor, the little chip near the fridge I always meant to fix. Something grounding. Something real. Then I made a cup of tea. Chamomile. Not because I wanted it, but because it was the one thing I could control. I sat on the porch swing for an hour, knees curled to my chest, the mud balanced in my hands. I didn't cry. Not then. The kind of hurt I felt didn't come with tears. It was deeper. Heavier. It settled into the marrow. Across the street, their porch light flickered off at 11:02. 10 minutes later, hers did too. I pictured them curled up together. Whispering. Laughing. Maybe scrolling through new ways to ridicule me. But this time, I didn't flinch. Instead, I whispered aloud to no one. Okay. I said it softly. Once. Then again, with more certainty. Okay. Then I made a plan. Here's the thing about betrayal. Once you see it clearly, it becomes a kind of fuel. Cold. Efficient. It burns through the dead wood of your life, until only truth remains. I didn't scream. Didn't throw dishes. I didn't even confront him. That's the twist people expect, right? The dramatic showdown. But I had a better idea. I waited. We were invited to a block party the following Saturday. Nora made peach cobbler. Theo brought his signature bourbon punch. I wore a white sundress and a smile so big it hurt. As dusk settled, I asked Nora to come with me to the kitchen inside the host's house, some excuse about needing help with the cheese board. When the door shut behind us, I turned and said, I know. She blinked. Sorry? I know about you and Theo. The videos. The texts. Her face froze. And then, brilliantly, she smiled. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't, I said softly. But you're about to be hurt. Very badly. I left her there, went outside, and stood on the little platform they used for neighborhood announcements. Hey, everyone, I said, tapping my glass with a spoon. I just want to thank you all for welcoming us to Savannah. It's been a really enlightening couple of months. And I'd like to raise a toast to honesty. Because when you find out your husband's been sleeping with your neighbor, and they were stupid enough to document it all in a folder labeled work reports, you have a choice: burn your life down quietly. Or make it a damn bonfire. A few gasps. One woman dropped her drink. I held up a USB drive.
Videos available upon request.
Then I walked out, and didn't look back. I moved into a friend's rental cottage outside Asheville the following week. Quiet. Wooded. Filled with the kind of silence I chose, not the kind that creeps in when love starts to die. The air smelled different there, cleaner, sharper, touched with pine and damp earth. The cottage was small, with uneven hardwood floors and mismatched furniture that felt like it had stories of its own. The windows were old and drafty, but I didn't mind. I liked the way the wind whispered through the cracks at night. It sounded like a lullaby for grown women who had survived something. Each morning, I wrapped myself in an old cardigan and stepped out onto the little back porch with a steaming mug of coffee, staring at the fog lifting from the trees. There were no voices here. No performative laughs from across the street. Just birdsong and the occasional rustle of deer moving through the brush. I didn't sleep much that first week. My body still expected the sound of the garage door opening, the soft clatter of Theo's keys on the counter. But here, there was only silence. A silence I had earned. A silence that didn't judge me for rereading old messages or for crying, quietly, into my tea at 3 a.m. because I missed the idea of him more than the man he actually was. I started writing again. Not blog posts, real writing. The kind that came from the center of my bruised chest. I didn't worry about who would read it, or if it sounded polished. I wrote like I was purging poison. About Theo. About what it's like to live in the shadow of someone's ambition. About betrayal so deep it rewrites your sense of self. I wrote about the years I spent shrinking myself to keep the peace. About how love can rot quietly beneath a polite surface. About the ache of sleeping next to someone who no longer reaches for you. About the horror of realizing you've become invisible in your own life. One night, with trembling fingers, I posted one of the essays online. I didn't even give it a title at first. I just hit publish and closed the laptop, thinking maybe 5 people would read it. Maybe. But the next morning, my inbox had 72 unread messages. By the end of the day, it was hundreds. Women wrote to me from all over the world. Thank you for saying it out loud. This gave me the strength to leave. I thought it was just me. You told my story. I've never felt so seen. Some wrote pages, detailing years of emotional neglect, of feeling small, of carrying the emotional labor of entire relationships while their partners drifted elsewhere. Others just wrote one word, finally. I read every single one. Slowly. Reverently. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes I laughed through the tears. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel ashamed. It wasn't just them. It never is. Betrayal is language women are taught to whisper. But here, in the quiet of that mountain cottage, I had found a way to scream, without raising my voice. And somehow, women across oceans and time zones had heard me. We were building a chorus. I never named him, not once. But people pieced it together anyway. He lost clients and friends grew distant. Nora moved out 2 months later. I heard she left a note, just 4 words scrawled in black ink. She was never clueless. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about him. About us. About the version of our love that felt like home before it started to hurt. I don't miss him, not who he became, but I do grieve the woman I was when I believed in us. I miss her innocence, her blind loyalty, her stubborn hope. I wish I'd asked more questions. I wish I'd listened to the silence sooner. But I don't regret leaving. In fact, I think walking away might have been the first true act of love I ever showed myself. Now, I wake up without flinching. I write with purpose. I take long walks and let the sun touch my skin like I'm letting the world hold me again. I'm planting herbs on the windowsill, answering emails from strangers who call me brave, and finally, believing them. 2 months later, I got a letter from Nora. Real pen and ink, no return address.
I don't expect forgiveness. But I do want you to know, he told me you were cruel to him, that you didn't love him, that you cheated first. He lied to me too.
I folded the letter and lit a match. Some stories don't need epilogues. 6 months later. I bought a house with a wraparound porch and magnolia trees in the front yard. There's no neat ending here. No new man. No grand reinvention. Just me and a dog I named Clementine. That's where the happiness is hiding, I think, not in the arms of someone new, but in the quiet certainty that I am enough on my own. Sometimes, at sunset, I pour a glass of wine and sit outside, thinking about Mercer Street. About how far I've come. Betrayal broke something in me. But it also cleared the way. For truth. For strength. For a life of my own choosing. Because here's the other thing no one tells you about betrayal. It may break your heart. But it will also set your soul on fire.